Yes! Hello, my beautiful friends. What an amazing day it is, and welcome back. Happy Tuesday. I hope your week is unfolding beautifully well and you're accomplishing every single thing you set your mind to. We got some business today. One guy who's not accomplishing things he set his mind to is Gavin Newsom. We're going to talk about how he just lost today in the Northern District of California. He filed something very, very sneaky called an ex parte filing that was intended to try to get a Bill Clinton appointed judge, this guy, Charles Breyer, to come out and stop Trump from using the National Guard to bring law and order to LA. So we're going to go through some of these filings. You see a couple things happened today, lots of activity in this case. Gavin Newsom says, "Come arrest me, Tom. Come arrest me, Trump." And then, of course, is now suing. And so he filed a lawsuit and he's asking for a TRO, a temporary restraining order, against Pete Hegseth. What a baby. He's got to stop Pete Hegseth from coming in and cleaning up his mess. So, Judge, help me. Please stop him from doing this. Well, the judge came out, said, "You lose, Gavin." And we'll listen to or read through what the judge said. We'll see what Gavin's arguments are. And we'll see what Trump submitted, because his DOJ was on the dot with this one, man. They filed this one right back today, as soon as Gavin's dropped. So we'll go through the latest filings there and learn more about what's happening, because, of course, they're trying to stop Pete Hegseth from doing anything that is useful in LA. So we'll talk about that. Then we'll go through some clips here, because there was this Mayor Bass out of LA who is saying that there is chaos now being caused by Washington, and she's demanding that the raids stop, right? That the raids actually go away. This is a little back end here. The raids she wants to stop. And if they don't stop, the question is, well, what are you going to do about it, Mayor Bass? And Stephen Miller was here explaining that this is a direct threat. Trump was out with a bunch of different posts today explaining that we're going to use the National Guard and we're going to invoke the Insurrection Act if we need to. And so just get ready for it in LA, in California. We had a statement from the president over on his True Social where he was explaining, "I'm ready to use this act if I need to." And we'll refresh our recollection on Mexico's stance on all of this, because Mexico, of course, as we saw yesterday, their president, Sheinbaum, she came out and said they might be ready to mobilize against Americans if they tax their remittances, which is their siphoning off of our economic value. So they're very upset about it. But now the Senate president of Mexico is also saying, you know, the Western U.S. was once Mexico's. So we have two branches of government down there, the president and the Senate, saying this land is their land. Yeah, that's what we've been worried about. You also have this person here, amazing, saying, "You can't kick us out of the land that was ours." And look at this face right here. Oof, menacing. Wow. Yeah, so I don't know about you, but I'm shaking in my pantalones over here. So we got Kennedy coming up. We're going to listen to Mark Wayne Mullen. We got Tom Cotton just dropping it in the Senate today. And a nice clip from him before we go to our very favorite pollster. I know how much you love him, Harry Etten. He's going to give us a short clip today on how this is really actually good for Trump. And of course, we know that because it's good for America. Trump is doing stuff on behalf of America. So we'll go through all that. Then we'll talk about Backdoor Dugan. Remember this judge who was helping these ICE agents or deviating these ICE agents while she was taking her amigo illegal alien out the back door in her courtroom? Well, Trump and the DOJ have now filed a motion to a response to her motion to dismiss. Remember, the Dugan came out and said, "I'm a judge. I've got judicial immunity. There's nothing you can do to me because I'm better than you," essentially. And Trump responded to that. So it's a very nice filing explaining you're kind of dumb and none of this is applicable to your arguments. And we also have the jury questionnaire, which has now come out as well. So we'll take a look at that. We'll see what else is cooking in that case. And then take a look at Trump over at Fort Bragg today. And this just beautiful scene of freedom and liberty flying through the sky and jumping out of an airplane. So we'll come back on that. And as you can tell, it's going to be an amazing stream, and we're very grateful that you are here and with us, joining us. Thanks for subscribing if you haven't already done so. Now, before we get into any business on the day, let's talk about aging, because aging, of course, hits all of us, whether it's stiff joints, poor sleep, brain fog creeping in earlier than expected. A lot of that goes back to what's happening at the cellular level, and that's where Fatty 15 comes in. Now, Fatty 15 is powered by this thing called C15-0, the first essential fatty acid discovered in over 90 years. It was originally found thanks to the work of Dr. Stephanie Venn Watson when she was in the U.S. Navy, and they were there learning how to improve the health of aging dolphins. And now it's helping humans too. So over 100 studies show that C15 supports stronger, more resilient cells and slows biological aging. As many as 1 in 3 people worldwide may have low C15 levels and cellular fragility syndrome. So this isn't just about looking younger, it's about deeper sleep, sharper thinking, healthier aging from the inside out. And it's vegan and has 3 times the cellular benefits of omega-3s. Now, Fatty 15 is on a mission to optimize your C15 levels to help support your long-term health and wellness, especially as you age. And you can get an additional 15% off their 90-day subscription starter kit by going to Fatty15, the number, fatty15.com/Robert, or just use code Robert at checkout. It's a breakthrough in healthy aging backed by science. And of course, the links are in the description below. So make sure you get your Fatty 15. We appreciate them sponsoring today's show. All right, so let's get into business now on the day, my friends, because Gavin Newsom is having a rough day. Gavin Newsom having a rough day. Just filed this emergency ex parte motion to have a judge stop what Trump is doing to bring law and order to LA. And Gavin just lost because the judge said, not going to give you what you're asking for. Now, Gavin sent this one in. He said, I just filed an emergency motion to block Trump's illegal deployment of Marines and the National Guard in LA, saying Trump is turning the military against American citizens. No, they're not. That's the whole point, Gavin, is they're not citizens. Hello, we're trying to go in and identify them and remove them from our country. Not complicated. In fact, you're trying to obstruct that from happening. So no, that's not happening at all. In fact, the illegals are attacking American citizens like the LAPD and other ICE agents who are there doing their job and enforcing the law. So the military is there to support the American citizens. Your side is there to undermine the American citizens. So he filed this motion to block these illegal actions. And everybody was a little bit nervous on this because, first of all, you see it's an ex parte motion, and he submitted this in the Northern District of California. We've had some pretty bad cases come out of this district in the prior injunction cases that we've covered here. In fact, William Alsup is another district judge there who issued a nationwide injunction against Trump. So, oh gosh, San Franciscoville. And we're going to get Judge Breyer, and Judge Breyer is going to be a Bill Clinton appointee. Oh gosh, we're in big trouble. But no, that's not what happened. In fact, Gavin Newsom lost today. And what's interesting about this too is this ex parte motion is meaning he's asking that the judge rule without bringing in Trump, without bringing in the DOJ. Don't even listen to them. This is so urgent and necessary, and everybody's going to die. All these illegal aliens are going to be rounded up or something, whatever's going on that he's claiming. We'll take a look at the motion, is so urgent that we can't even hear from the other side. That's how pathetic this is. For all these people who are screaming about due process, how about due process for, the president of the United States and law and order in your city? But they tried to sneak this one around the judge. Judge Breyer didn't bite on it. And here is what his order said. He said, Gavin Newsom and the state of California, they filed this ex parte motion for a temporary restraining order against Pete Hegseth. We'll look at it briefly. And he said, he said that Trump responded and they said, how about no? How about you don't just rule on this ex parte? Can we have 24 hours to respond from this? Hello, give us just 24 hours from the time they filed their motion to file a response brief. If we can, Judge, that's okay because, we're the president. The judge said, actually, yeah. So Trump, your request is granted. So Gavin Newsom loses. His attempt to have this emergency ex parte secret conversation with the judge be granted in his favor so that Trump would have to pull the National Guard out of there via court order is now stalled. The opposition shall be due by Wednesday. So Trump's going to have to respond by basically maybe tomorrow. Got to look at the times of the filings. But basically, so then Trump's opposition is due by tomorrow. Then plaintiff may file a response to that opposition by Thursday. Okay, so Trump's got until 11 tomorrow. Then Newsom can respond by Thursday, which means the National Guard is going to be there this entire time. Oh, so then the court is going to hold a hearing on the motion in open court on this Thursday, June 12th. Any party wishing to appear by Zoom may do so. And what's pretty interesting about this court, which I did not know, or this judge in particular, is that he is a part of this video program that will allow us maybe to look inside the courtroom. So he said here, we've got an initial management scheduling order with deadlines and notice. He writes, the assigned judge participates in the cameras in the courtroom project. Oh, says this case is assigned to a judge who participates in the cameras in the courtroom pilot project. The party's consent is required before any proceedings may be recorded. If a party, the presiding judge, or a member of the media requests that something be recorded, consent of all the parties will be presumed, unless a party submits an objection. We'll see if anybody does. Parties objecting to this are asked for research purposes to communicate your reasons for declining. If you decline to participate, you should candidly convey the reasons for your decision. Whether you agree to participate or decline will have no effect on your case whatsoever. So if you don't agree, you can veto the whole thing. But we'll see. We'll see if Gavin Newsom wants this to be heard in public. So that happened, and the judge has now denied what Gavin sent. Now, this is what is coming in from the DOJ. Gavin submitted his motion, and Trump responded. They said, this is ridiculous. We filed notice to their, in opposition to their request for an ex parte temporary restraining order that just came in the dark of night to try to stop us from enforcing the law. They say Gavin Newsom's motion is legally meritless. It seeks an extraordinary, unprecedented, dangerous court order, and if entered, Gavin's proposed order would jeopardize the safety of Homeland Security personnel. Just like Judge Boasberg said, turn that plane around. And Judge Zenas said, facilitate his return, and all the things. You're asking this judge now who's going to be in control of the National Guard, who's been deployed here to stop these maniacs in California, and it's going to interfere with the federal government's ability to carry out their operations. Now, Trump says that Gavin is requesting that this court supervise the president and the Secretary of Defense in their management of the military forces. All of this, highly unusual and non-justiciable under the constitutional principles. They cannot do that. Now, you can't sue on it. And so this court should reject Gavin's suggestion that this court enter an order on a one-sided record without even a hearing from us on a subject of grave importance that implicates the separation of powers. As they noted in their motion to sue us, Trump requested the court enter an order making our opposition to their request due at 11 a.m. And then we want 24 hours at least. Of course, the judge granted that, signed and submitted by the Trump DOJ. Shout out to Christopher Edelman getting that one in from the civil division over there in the Northern District of California. Now, Gavin also submitted his motion. So baby Gavin is like, please, Hegseth, stop. He's filing a TRO against him. And just to show you what's inside of these motions, a lot of it is what you'd expect from Gavin. So he writes, we're suing everybody, including Hegseth, because everyone's going to die. Plaintiff requests leave to file, a bigger filing, a big drop from Rob Bonta, the California AG. And he's going to give us a lecture. Says the police, not the military, enforce the law. And, go through the whole litany that we've already heard from him. So it's actually not that interesting. But let's see what they were asking for in the meantime. They said here, this tips in our favors. We seek to preserve the status quo by stopping Trump from ordering or deploying the active duty members of the military or the National Guard soldiers to patrol communities, right? Kick them out, or otherwise engage in general law enforcement activities beyond the immediate vicinity of federal buildings or other real property. And as outlined above, Trump's use of the military deprives the state of vital resources, escalates tensions, and promotes rather than quells civil unrest, right? So this is the same thing that Mayor Bass is coming up with, that Trump is causing the problems. Trump is enforcing the law. The illegal aliens can come and comply show up as requested and get out of the country, and there's not going to be any problems at all. But when there's a battle, when they obstruct and insurrect the ICE agents who are doing their jobs, that can't be allowed to happen. You can't veto enforcement of federal law, can you? I don't think so. By contrast, the public interest is served if the court stops Trump from further militarizing California. And so the DOD should be stopped and blah, blah, blah. Now, for all the foregoing reasons, they're going to re-argue this back on Thursday when we come back for the hearing. They say, we urge the court to help California keep the peace in LA and enter a TRO that prevents federal troops from enforcing the laws in a civilian city. And so obviously that's been denied at the moment, at least at the emergency level, at the emergency basis. So the National Guard and everybody else can be there at least until Thursday when we'll be back in court. And the judge will give us a ruling. And this is the judge. His name is Charles Breyer, the son of Stephen Breyer, who was a former Supreme Court judge, active in the Boy Scouts of America, born to a Jewish family in San Francisco, California. So there he is, right from San Francisco. He was a special assistant prosecutor in the Watergate case and has been on the bench forever, is on the United States Sentencing Commission and was ultimately appointed by Bill Clinton. So he's held off, went to Harvard. And of course, he's held off on this and said, brief this a little bit further. We'll wait to hear from the government, in this case, Trump, and wait for their filings that will be coming in tomorrow. So Hegseth, the person who is the subject of the TRO, we're saying, or Gavin is saying that Hegseth should be enjoined from using the National Guard to come into California. And there was an exchange here between this representative, Betty McCollum. She's over from Minnesota, and stuff is popping off over there in Minnesota as well. In fact, stuff is popping off all over California still. Gavin Newsom and this woman would like you to believe that California is, mostly peaceful and whatever. But the truth is, last night, as we saw, Brendan Gutenschwager, aka BG on the Scene on X, posted this, said, Apple Store in downtown LA is being looted tonight. What? I thought these were PhD scholars who were coming into America just to work for a better life and improve their family circumstances. Okay, what's going on right here? Looks like LAPD is doing a great job on that one. Oh, here they come. Running away, little thieves. Just ransacking everything, and Californians apparently just perfectly fine with it. At least that's what the representatives say. Gavin Newsom doesn't care. Mayor Bass doesn't care. Smashing windows. Got to go out that way. Not too bright. That front door's inconvenient. Guns going off. There you go. Or non-lethal projectiles. Good scene over there. War on the streets of California. And it's coming to cities near you. We've got it also popping off in other locations, including in Arizona now, in Peoria, which we've got coming up. But the point is, CNN is still wanting to call this a peaceful situation. And our friend Nicholas Fondacaro got this clipped for us over during an interview yesterday from CNN's Sarah Sidner. She brought on an LA County supervisor and said, can you talk to us about what's happening here? Are the ICE raids more harmful than the protests? In other words, is Trump causing this? Tell us why Trump is such a bad man, will you? And why these are all innocent people who are just good people.
Supervisor Barger, let me first ask you this. Are the protests or the ICE raids having a bigger impact on the city of Los Angeles?
Well, right now, I would argue the protests are having a bigger impact on what is taking place downtown. I mean, this is not peaceful protests. These are anarchists who are going in and really opportunists. They're taking advantage of a situation that unfortunately continues to escalate. So right now, my concern are the protesters, not the peaceful, which we saw when they were downtown supporting,
Big important caveat, and CNN's like, yes, not the peaceful protesters, because that's our job right now, is to reframe this as a peaceful protest and just to reference all the flags that they're waving around as symbols of cultural heritage, not evidence of conquest or insurrection or an invasion by a foreign power who is now seizing lands of an independent sovereign. Not at all. It's just they, like Hispanic heritage.
David Huerta. I think it's important for us to recognize that they are coming in peace, but there are those that are embedded that are really attacking law enforcement. This is not about ICE. This is about completely dismantling law enforcement.
Wow. Completely dismantling law enforcement from LA County Supervisor. And that clip came over from Media Research Center Newsbusters. Shout out to them. So as we can see, there's more happening. This is what it looks like inside a Salvadoran restaurant in downtown LA. Officers getting abused by illegal aliens. And we've got, it looks like, a Salvadorian restaurant, maybe with some Salvadoran immigrants legally here, who are taking care of the troops and the soldiers who have been attacked there, giving them some food and taking care of them, fanning the flames as they're under attack. So shout out to our good individuals over there in LA who are helping those who need it. So that's happening over there. Now, GAVIN is now facing a hearing over this about whether Trump has the power to do this or not. And this woman is called Betty McCollum. She's a representative from Minnesota, and she was on with Hegseth. She went about 2 minutes just kind of egregious democracy. Finally, she asks Hegseth a question, and here is what Pete had to say in response to her inquisition about California.
Climates. What holes are being created?
Well, Congresswoman, thank you for the question. You are right. We are both originally from Minnesota, which is why I recall 2020 quite well, when Governor Walz abandoned a police precinct and allowed it to be burned to the ground. And also allowed 5 days of chaos to occur inside the streets of Minneapolis. The police precinct, ma'am, was abandoned and burned to the ground.
Burned to the ground, 3rd precinct,
and because of that, the National Guard was eventually far too late mobilized. And President Trump recognizes a situation like that, improperly handled by a governor, like it was by Governor Walz, if it gets out of control, is a bad situation for the citizens of any location. So in Los Angeles, we believe that ICE, which is a federal law enforcement agency, has the right to safely conduct operations in any state and any jurisdiction in the country, especially after 21 million illegals have crossed our border under the previous administration. ICE ought to be able to do its job, whether it's Minneapolis or Los Angeles.
I have limited time. I asked a budget
and they
question.
Are being,
Could the Secretary please address the budget? Thank you.
You asked about the situation in Los Angeles, and we believe ICE agents should be allowed to be safe in doing their operations, and we have deployed National Guard and the Marines to protect them in the execution of their duties, because we ought to be able to enforce immigration law in this country, unlike what Governor Walz did in 2020. There are 17,000 LAPD, you mentioned that. There would be 18,000 if not for the defund movement that folks like Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass have implemented. The police chief said she was overwhelmed,
so we helped. If the Secretary's not going to ask the budgetary questions, I will yield back my time if the Secretary refuses to answer the budgetary questions I put before him. They're important. What training missions aren't happening? Where are you pulling the money from? And how are you planning this in the moving forward?
Not letting it happen again.
These are budget questions that affect this committee and the decisions we're going to be making in a couple of hours. If you're not going to answer them, please let the chairman know, and I will take back my time and I will yield it back to the chairman.
Mr. Secretary, I want to just let us know what accounts you're pulling the money to fund.
Thankfully, unlike the previous administration, we've got a 13% increase in our defense budget, and we will have the capability to cover down on contingencies, which is something the National Guard and the Marine plan for. So we have the funding to cover down on contingencies, especially ones as important as maintaining law and order in a major American city. As far as training, all of the units on the ground have been fully trained in their capabilities of what they're executing on the ground.
For budgetary, if he
Yeah, so they're ready to go and they're paid for, and they will restore law and order and not allow what happened last time when we had reckless, cowardly governors who abandoned their third precincts in Minneapolis and allowed it to be burnt to the ground. And then Kamala Harris turned around and posted on X and was helping people raise money to get out on bond so they could go back out and hit the streets back during that election, the summer of love. Fiery but mostly peaceful, as we recall. So shout out to Hegseth, looking like he's pretty confident there. Yeah, that was nice. So she had a tough time. She wanted answers, and he gave them to her. So Hegseth now will be back in court on Thursday for a TRO. Of course, we'll keep our eyes on this one, but as it stands right now, Gavin Newsom loses his demand for an ex parte order from the judge kicking the National Guard out. They'll be staying there for the foreseeable future pending the hearing on Thursday. We'll cover that one. Thanks for subscribing and joining as we do. Now, let's turn our attention to what's happening with the mayor. Mayor Bass is now making threats against the Trump administration, saying, we need to stop the raids, or else what, Karen? Stephen Miller is identifying this and calling it what it is. He says, the threat being made here by Mayor Bass is explicit. The mayor of LA is effectively saying the mob violence is caused by the mere presence of ICE in the city, and that the violence against ICE will not stop unless federal law enforcement is withdrawn from the city. This is the definition of an insurrection. LA and California leadership demand the right to illegally import unlimited foreigners into America, to control America's entire immigration policy by fiat, just we don't like it, and so now we don't have to comply. And if they're not so permitted, they're going to allow mobs to just go target ICE with impunity, not even allow them to do their jobs. Now, LA and California are demanding the nullification of the election results now, of federal law and of national security and of the bedrock constitutional command of one national government. And so here is what Mayor Karen had to say.
We need to stop the raids. This should not be happening in our city. It is not warranted, and the only thing it does is contribute to chaos. This was chaos that was started at Washington, D.C. On Thursday, the city was peaceful. On Friday, it was not, because of the intervention of the federal government.
Law enforcement who's enforcing the law caused the madness, not the people who attack the federal law enforcement upholding the law. Now, Karen Bass obviously has a strong background as a communist, and so that's not a surprising statement from her. But Stephen Miller is right. This is the implied and implicit threat that's being lobbed all over the country, and it's now spreading around to Arizona. You saw this was the scene here. Phoenix New Times reported this. Said Phoenix New Times spotted ICE and Homeland Security in Arizona and at least 3 spots on the west side of the valley. Shout out. Welcome, gentlemen. Welcome to Arizona. Glad to have you here. Eventually, a scuffle broke out between a few protesters and Peoria police, and one protester was subdued with a taser. And yeah, there we go. We see it happening right there. So that's in Arizona and another border state. So we're just waiting for these things to spread. We've seen them in Dallas now. We got them in Peoria, Arizona. And we've got more happening, and they're organizing, right? They're coalescing. They've got little communications and groups where they're chatting around and colluding. Remember everything they accused the Proud Boys of doing when they said the Proud Boys were in their little group chats and they were saying they're going to organize an insurrection? What's going on right here? How are they responding to these locations where ICE is and having these crowds come in and just swarm the cops? Sounds like maybe they're in some Telegram groups, and maybe that will be justification for seditious conspiracy charges like they charged the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers with, who never did anything even remotely resembling this. So here we see that President Trump came out and posted on X today after holding a press briefing in the White House. He said the following: if there's an insurrection, I would certainly invoke the Insurrection Act. You are warned, so get ready for it. If we didn't get involved, right now Los Angeles would be burning, just like it was burning a number of months ago. We are not playing around. Here is your favorite president.
If there's an insurrection, I would certainly invoke it. We'll see. But I can tell you last night was terrible. The night before that was terrible. We have, as you've seen, it was on most of your networks, people with big, heavy hammers pounding the concrete and pounding curbs, pounding it, breaking up all, and handing these big chunks of concrete to people. And they were taking that concrete, going up on bridges and dropping it into the roof of a car. They were throwing it at our police. They were throwing it at our soldiers that are there. And we got it stopped, and we have them in custody right now. Look, if we didn't get involved, right now, Los Angeles would be burning, just like it was burning a number of months ago with all the houses that were lost. Los Angeles right now would be on fire, and we have it in great shape. We're not playing around.
How will you determine whether or not there is an insurrection?
Well, you'll take a look at what's happening. I mean, I could tell you there were certain areas of Los Angeles that you could have called it an insurrection. It was terrible. But these are paid insurrectionists. These are paid troublemakers. They get money. And when you take a look at what they do, where they show up and everyone's saying, what's he doing? He's pounding the curbs. This one guy's pounding the curb, breaking the curb, and handing big pieces of granite. In some cases, it's granite and concrete to other people. And they're running out with it. And then we watch the other people, and they try and throw it into the face of the soldiers, throw it into the face of the police, and they hurt some people very badly. They go up on bridges, they drop it down on the cars as the cars are moving. They're not breaking the curb because they're doing a demolition service. They're breaking it to hand out to people as a weapon. It's bad stuff. I've never seen that before.
And this has been going on for days. Remember how upset they were on January 6th for a riot that lasted about 3-4 hours, and they returned that same night to vote? This has been going on for days, enabled by their side, and these are coordinated attacks on police. And they just ID'd the guy. We talked about it on the member stream this morning. Reina Eppolito, something is his name. And they got him his ID, and now he's one of the most wanted. But Trump says, look, we're talking about the National Guard. We're not going to wait for the governors to allow their cities to burn because that's what their constituents want. This is America. We are going to create law and order in our states. Here's the president.
You have to remember, I've been here before, and I went right by every rule, and I waited for governors to say, send in the National Guard. They wouldn't do it. They wouldn't do it. And they just wouldn't do it. It kept going on and on, got worse and worse. And in Minneapolis, that city was burning down 7 days. And I said, I don't care. The governor, who's a governor that just happened to be running for vice president, a total, you talk about an incompetent governor. He's an incompetent person.
Yeah, true.
That he was picked. Well, I was actually very happy he was picked for other reasons. But this guy wouldn't call the National Guard. And we ultimately just sent in the National Guard. We stopped it. But that was after 7 days. And I said to myself, if that stuff happens again, we've got to make faster decisions because they don't want to do it. The radical left, it's usually radical left, and it's usually governors that are Democrat, and they don't want to call them in. They don't want to save lives. They don't want to save property. They don't want to call them in. I don't know what it is. We sent them in, not early, we sent them in late as far as I'm concerned. But big problems, as you know, 3 nights ago, big problems were ensuing. If we didn't send in the National Guard quickly, right now, Los Angeles would be burning to the ground.
And it's not in spite of Gavin Newsom's best efforts. So Trump is right. He has the right to do this. We're going to hear Tom Cotton explain why that is. But Trump is also warning, you know, America's birthday is coming up on June 14th. And if you are showing up and causing a ruckus on the birthday of the 14th military parade, which happens to fall on his birthday, you're in big trouble.
Any message to adversaries as the Army kicks off a 250-year birthday celebration?
I just think it's amazing. We're going to have a fantastic June 14th parade, Flag Day. It's going to be an amazing day. We have tanks, we have planes, we have all sorts of things. And I think it's going to be great. We're going to celebrate our country for a change. You know, Recently, as you know, with World War II, the victory of World War II, I called up France and they were celebrating the victory. Well, we helped them a lot, as you know. I don't have to get into that. But I called up other countries. They were all celebrating the victory. We're the only country that didn't celebrate the victory. And we're the one that won the war. Okay, if it wasn't for us, that war, well, you would be speaking German right now, okay? We won the war. And you might be speaking Japanese, too. I mean, you might be speaking a combination of both. We won the war, and we're the only country that didn't celebrate it. And we're going to be celebrating big on Saturday. We're going to have a lot of, and if there's any protest that wants to come out, they will be met with very big force. By the way, for those people that want to protest, they're going to be met with very big force. And I haven't even heard about a protest, but, you know, this is people that hate our country, but they will be met with very heavy force.
There's a big protest coming out on the 14th, which is going to be the No Kings protest, which we mentioned yesterday. And they're planning that all over the country. Little Insurrection Day, I guess, on Flag Day. So we'll, of course, keep our eye on that as well. But while all this was going on, Maxine Waters came out and she basically said that don't believe what you saw. All of the protesting was peaceful. And if a couple cars got burnt, don't worry about it. Those are meant for burning. And they're not your cars, so just relax about it. Mike Johnson responded to this and was basically incredulous. Pretty funny clip. So here's what Maxine Waters said about the violence.
And even those who were out of step with what we are advocating, peaceful protest, did not create any violence. Nobody was shot. Nobody was killed. Get it in your head. And so when martial law is called, what are you going to say? I missed the point. Don't miss the point, you all. Don't think that somehow, because they called out the National Guard, there was violence. There was no violence.
We saw it
on the street. I know. And I went from downtown detention back out into the community, talking to people what happened in Paramount, what happened in Compton, what happened in Inglewood. So, first of all, get it straight. And don't just rely on what you're being told or the few incidents that you saw.
Few incidents that you saw are not indicative of what's actually happening there. I think we know that is ridiculous. Here's Mike Johnson saying the same. He got asked about this today.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What is your reaction to Congresswoman Maxine Waters repeatedly saying that there has been no violence in the LA riots? And do you believe that Democrats are making a mistake by not talking about what's really going on here?
Clearly, the Democrats are making a mistake by taking the wrong side here, and I'm just going to, in my southern gentlemanly way, say bless her heart to Maxine Waters. I don't even know how to comment on Maxine Waters anymore. It's madness. I'm going to be charitable and leave it right there. Yes.
All right, so good response from Mike Johnson, and Maxine has a lot of work to do to get reconnected back to reality. But in the meantime, yesterday we talked about how the Mexican president, Sheinbaum, she came out and said that it might be time to mobilize our people against the United States, and said that if we dare tax remittances, which would be her illegal aliens and maybe some lawful permanent residents as well, maybe lawful citizens too, but a lot of illegal aliens come to the United States, take our money, send it via Western Union back over to Mexico to the tune of billions of dollars a year, like $50 to $60 billion a year. That money leaves your community, goes back to their communities, and it builds down there, not up here. So what if we tax those so they don't do that as much anymore? Well, Claudia Sheinbaum said that she's not going to be happy about that. They might mobilize. She was out there going crazy on this thing because that's a huge source of revenue for them. So she had to go wild. Now, similarly, in a co-equal branch of government, Mexican Senate president over there, maybe it's co-equal or not, I don't know, but in Mexico, says the Mexican Senate president also reminds everybody that the Western U.S. was once Mexico while denouncing the deportations. As we talked about, we had the Plan of San Diego back in 1912-ish, where the Mexicans were going to go kill all non-Hispanic Caucasians in their documents. That plan never went off, but it was a plan because they say that the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo was invalid and that we stole their land from them after they declared independence from Spain in the 1812s because they couldn't control the land. So we had a war They got pushed out of Texas. They settled, had a treaty, but they say we took advantage of them and they're unhappy about it. And so all of this land is really theirs. It's called Reconquista. It's a real thing. They write about it. They don't like to talk about it because if they talk about it, then they say, oh, well, it's an invasion. It's a recapture of our lands. But there's many Hispanic, Mexican thinkers who explain it. There's a whole movement called Aztlan, which is also part of this operation. And now the Mexican Senate president is confirming it. So we're all asking ourselves, oh, is this the climactic event? Is this the apex of this generational battle that you might argue has been going on for 175 years? So Mexican president called Gerardo Fernandez Noroña on Monday highlighted that his country says, we once owned California, Texas, and much of the United States' western territories, while defending the Spanish-speaking people who live there among the deportation efforts, right? So now we've got foreign leaders who are talking about mobilizing and defending illegals. Now, while he conceded that the U.S. had the right to enforce its immigration policies, he was adamant that Mexicans had an ancestral tie to the land and that the government must respect the rights of immigrants within its borders. We must respect the rights of your people in our borders who are here illegally. Names don't lie. He said the most spoken language in LA is Spanish. LA is probably fallen, so just, if that is true, he insisted. I don't know if it's true or not. But he says it is. And I've got a question on this. If you were to go through and look at all the representatives and measure their districts, what percentage of the people in California and their districts, what percentage are illegal? Do we have any stats on that? I don't know. Would like to know. But that would be a curious thing to know. Because remember, apportionment and the assignment of representative seats go based on total population, not total citizens. So what of these representatives is it 20% illegals who are a part of their constituency? Or is it 50% or higher? Do we know? I'm sure some of them are up there in a very uncomfortable position. And that means their seat probably shouldn't exist. So the names don't lie, he says. He then recalled a 2017 conversation. Trump said, we're going to build a wall, but we'll do it according to the 1830 map of Mexico, he said. That's what he told him. He said, we'll build a wall, but we'll build it up back to the 1830s. Mexicans were settled in these territories before the U.S. was, and the Mexicans living there are in what has always been their homeland. So don't dare think for a second that this is just peaceful protest about due process for ICE deportations or whatever. It's a battle for the homeland. It's a battle for the physical geography around us. And we're here in Arizona, right in the thick of it. So Laredo was a Mexican city. We were stripped of these territories, and they're making these claims to support their illegals in our country doing what they're doing. Fernandez made the remarks amid ongoing riots. His people were waving Mexican flags all over the place, and he was probably enjoying it, sipping on a margarita with Senator Van Hollen. So he's not alone. We've also got this crazy person, Nick Shirley, clipped and posted this for us, says, here's an LA protester who believes the U.S. belongs to Mexico. This individual says, this is our city, and this was Mexico. This person's absolutely wild. So get ready, America, because the Reconquista is going to be led by chemistry class wearing, goggle wearing, loose, looks like maybe empty body armor, or I don't know what that is exactly, but be worried. So here's what she sounds like. This is our... All right, that's enough of that. We'll keep it muted. This was our city and this is Mexico. You can't kick us out of the land that was ours. F Donald Trump. Wow. F fascism. Let our people free. Golly. Let our people go. All right, so this is who they are. All right, so they're out there. What's the windblower for? Who has any idea? So that's the constituency that they're representing. They think the country is theirs, and they're acting accordingly. So hopefully the Republican Party wakes up and recognizes the threat that is around us. Senator John Kennedy was also out. Senator Kennedy said, we've got a wolf problem in Los Angeles, which couldn't be further or couldn't be truer. Here is what Kennedy said.
The situation is especially complicated. You don't need to be a astrophysicists to figure it out. We've got a wolf problem in Los Angeles. They're not peaceful protesters, they're wolves. They're hurting people, they're destroying property. So you say, well, where's the governor? Well, the governor is a sheep. He'll tell you, I'm a sheep. He's a sheep in sheep's clothing. He thinks cops are a bigger problem than criminals. So then you say, well, where's the mayor of Los Angeles? Maybe she can stop it. Well, she's a sheep too. More sheep is not going to solve the wolf problem. So the federal government sent in troops, and we're stopping the wolf problem. Last night was a better night, and tonight will be better still. It's not hard to figure out to me, and I think this is what, I think most Americans are looking at this and going, stop the wolves, and a lot of them are thinking, you know, nobody's talking about it, but who's going to pay for all this? You know, who's going to pay for all this destruction? Are we going to get the bill? That's the way I see it.
Yeah, we are. And it's another expense that we have to incur at the expense, thanks to illegal aliens invading our country. Mark Wayne Mullen, also a senator, said, you know, the left is claiming pro-illegal alien mob violence is the result of federal law enforcement presence, but that's ridiculous. He says literally nobody believes that. America is sick of illegal immigration and weak, lawless, liberal leadership. Now Newsom is suing POTUS, and he just lost. Here was what Mark Wayne Mullen had to say about all of this.
So have you guys heard what Governor Newsom just did? He literally is suing the President of the United States for deploying the National Guard to protect his state and his city. Can you imagine this? Because he's trying to do something that the governor's not willing to do, and that's by restoring law and order. Now keep in mind, the chief of police of LA has already said that he's overwhelmed and he needs help. Governor Newsom wasn't responding, so the president did. People act like this is something new. It's not new. President Eisenhower did this in '57 and employed the 101st Airborne. JFK did this in '62 and '63, and LBJ did this in '65. So this isn't anything new. When the governor is refusing to act and protect its citizens, when a mayor of its town is refusing to act, the president has the authority to do just exactly what President Trump is doing. Keep in mind, the president campaigned on, and he's been leading on restoring law and order back to our states, back to our cities, and back to our streets. I support President Trump 100% for willing to have the backbone to stand up and fight for everyone against this lawless act.
Shout out to Senator Mullen, and I think that was a little stress ball. Maybe it's that one big, beautiful bill business that they're working through. But as we see, this is exactly right. Gavin Newsom can't act because his whole constituency is made up of either illegals or people who are illegal adjacent, or people who are making money off of the illegal industry. So he has no incentive to solve the problem in his state. So the federal government had to come in and do it. Now, Tom Cotton was in the Senate today. He chairs the Intelligence Committee, and he went on a tear into these Democrats. Before this clip, we had some Democrats going wild. Sounds like it was Tim Kaine and some other weird blue Democrats. Tom Cotton comes out and delivers, bringing the ruckus on the Senate floor.
Thank you. Before I get to matters of bipartisan concern on things like shipbuilding and munitions, I'm compelled to respond to the unhinged partisan rants by Senator Kaine and Senator Blumenthal about the riots in Los Angeles. I heard a lot of complaints about the use of the National Guard or the Marine Corps to defend federal property. Not surprisingly, a lot of attacks on Donald Trump. I don't think I heard condemnation of rioters and looters and arsonists and revolutionary anarchists that are burning down parts of Los Angeles. So let's put it in context. What's happening in Los Angeles? For 4 years under Joe Biden, we had a slow motion invasion of this country by millions of migrants, to include murderers, rapists, gang members, and other depraved savages. It wasn't just tolerated by Democrats in the Senate, it was celebrated. The American people spoke very clearly last year. They elected Donald Trump and a Republican Congress to secure the border, to enforce our immigration laws, and to deport violent, illegal aliens. That's exactly what our brave immigration authorities started doing on Friday. You have illegal aliens that were rounded up in Los Angeles that had committed heinous, violent crimes. Are we simply supposed to overlook them because they're in a democratic city or a democratic state? You can sexually assault children as an illegal alien, but if you're standing outside a Home Depot as a day laborer, immigration authorities are not supposed to arrest you and remove you from the streets to protect innocent civilians. And then what happened?
They use that line a lot
Again,
too, the Home Depot line.
Anarchists.
They're just out there working. Like, the dude has a laundry list of major felonies in his background. Just because he's now a newfound barber or steel worker like Kilmar was, doesn't exonerate his past in our country.
Revolutionaries, left-wing street militias started attacking law enforcement with bricks and cement and frozen water bottles, spitting in their faces, or much worse, setting cars on fire, looting buildings, setting buildings on fire.
LAPD.
Under these conditions, of course, we should always want the local police to be the first line of authority. And they usually can restore order. In Los Angeles, they could not. How do we know? The Los Angeles Police Department chief told us that his forces were overwhelmed, even as he kept them on all after their shift. The next line of defense against such civil disorder is the National Guard. You would expect a responsible governor, when one of his city's police forces are overwhelmed, to call out the National Guard. But the incompetent and ideological governor of California refused to do so.
Yep.
So President Trump had to act. He has clear legal authority to federalize the Guard when necessary to protect innocent life and property, and especially federal officers and federal property. That's exactly what he did. Just like, for instance, in my state in 1957, when the racist Democratic governor tried to use the National Guard to prevent the desegregation of Little Rock Central High School. And President Eisenhower said, "I don't think so," and federalized the Guard to ensure the desegregation of Little Rock Central. And what did the governor of California do? Rather than recognize the error of his ways and cooperate and try to restore order in California, he began grandstanding, attacking the president, suing the federal government for using the National Guard to restore order, which again is one of its functions. Now, the third line of defense, as Senator Blumenthal referenced, is the Insurrection Act, the use of active duty troops to restore order. The president has taken a measured approach so far. He has said he doesn't think it's necessary to do so, but he will use that venerable law, which goes back nearly to the beginning of our republic, if called for, as it was, for instance, in the 1992 LA riots. Now again, we all hope that these riots are stopped, that these outlaws and renegades are arrested and prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. But the president has a constitutional responsibility to protect innocent lives, to defend federal officers, and to defend federal property, which is exactly what the Marines were sent to Los Angeles to do. Not to engage in crowd control, not to engage in civilian arrests, but to protect federal property. Now, my time has expired, so I won't get to address some of the important issues that you came here to speak about, gentlemen, but I do want to express my thanks to the California Guard and to the Marines that are currently trying to perform the simple responsibility of protecting federal officers, federal property, and help the local police restore order in Los Angeles.
Nice one from Tom Cotton, senator over there in the Senate today, and laying it out pretty simply. It's incredible that the Democratic Party can't figure it out, and they are going to suffer the consequences of this at the polls. This is CNN's Harry Enton in a shorter clip where he's explaining that even legal immigrants are now abandoning the Democratic Party because they don't want this lawlessness either.
Yeah, let's just sort of start off on the fact that immigrant citizens, immigrant voters, foreign-born voters have gone tremendously to the right on this issue in 2024 and 2025 versus where they were in 2020. Closest to or trust more in immigration. You go back to 2020. Democrats, get this, held a 32-point lead on this issue. Immigrant voters were in the Democratic camp. Jump forward to 2024, 2025. Look at that shift, a 40-point shift to the right among immigrant voters. Republicans now lead on this issue by 8 points over Democrats, more so than any other group that I could find. The group of voters who became more hawkish on immigration were, in fact, immigrants themselves, immigrants who are registered to vote in this country. Yeah, let's
All
just
right, and now
sort of
Gavin
start.
Newsom is fighting for this cause, right? He is now sued to try to stop Trump. The judge came out, issued an order saying, you lose, Gavin. And now, of course, Trump is warning the insurrectionists. So they're still planning for more protests. Mayor Bass is telling Trump to stop the raids. Trump is saying, we're not stopping any raids, and the Insurrection Act might come out. Tom Cotton laying down the support for it in the Senate. And of course, we'll keep our eye on this as the protests continue, as the Mexican government continues to support the insurrection happening in our country. We'll keep our eye on President Trump, the DOJ, the FBI, Homeland Security, the National Guard, and the DOD, and all of them as they work to secure America. All right, so good updates there on that one, my friends. Now let's wrap it up with Backdoor Judge Dugan. Oh, golly. Here we go. The Trump prosecutors now shredding Hannah C. Dugan, also known as Judge Dugan, the backdoor judge, who snuck that illegal alien outside her backdoor courtroom that we captured on video. Remember, this was the scene when Big Dugan, Judge Dugan, Backdoor Dugan, approached these federal ICE agents and then took them down the hall, created a diversion, and then snuck the illegal out the back door. Now, she's been charged with crimes. She previously here filed a motion to dismiss her case, saying, I'm innocent, I'm a judge. Don't you know who I am? I have immunity, and there's nothing you can do to stop me, even if I'm breaking the law in my courtroom and obstructing a federal investigation and an arrest. So we saw all of this. That's the illegal who was fueted out her back door. Soon as they moved the ICE agents, they then snuck him right out, and he didn't get far because there was another federal agent who was following him around. And so we saw that. Then he left. They ultimately tracked him down, and now he is in custody. He's been arrested, and Dugan has been charged. But Dugan does not want to be convicted. She says, I am allowed to do this. I'm allowed to help this illegal try to flee federal agents and run down the street until he gets captured. And Trump's DOJ responded and said, no, you don't. And they came out swinging hard. They said, all right, big Judge Dugan, Backdoor Dugan, the indictment alleges against you that you took actions at the courthouse to prevent the arrest of the illegal, who was wanted on a federal warrant for purposes of removal proceedings conducted by Homeland Security. Now, more particularly, we're alleging the following, saying that upon learning of the ICE agent's plan to execute the federal warrant, here's what Dugan did. She knowingly concealed the illegal to prevent his discovery on an arrest warrant, violating U.S. law. And Dugan also corruptly endeavored to influence, to obstruct, to impede the arrest by committing affirmative acts to assist in the evasion of the arrest. So what are the affirmative acts, right? We've got this guilty mind. So this is an interesting statute because it's instructive. We talk a lot about criminal law having, or criminal statutes having two components to them, a mens rea, which would be a guilty mind, and an act, an actus reus, so a set of acts. So here you see them both. Was the judge acting corruptly? And if she was, mentally, what were the acts that support that? They say, oh, well, those are clear. Here are the affirmative acts that are alleged in count 2. saying confronting members, this is what she did. She confronted members of ICE and she falsely told them that they needed a judicial warrant to conduct their arrest. They said that was a lie. She knew it was a lie and lied. Upon learning that they had an actual administrative warrant for the arrest, she then directed all members of the ICE task force to leave the location of the planned arrest, which was outside the public hallway, which is where they normally do these things. She said, why don't you follow me to the chief judge's office? So then they addressed the case off the record. Okay, the illegal alien got due process plus. So if you go to court, your case is heard on the record. If you're charged with abusing victims, like this guy was, those victims have a chance to be there and be a part of the proceeding. That's why they're in court that day like they were on this day. The prosecution has an opportunity to be heard on the case before the judge just does something, ex parte. And the judge didn't care about any of that crap because she was so in love with this illegal alien that she wanted him to use her backdoor, and he did, and said specifically that I'll handle this case and issue a continuance. Then she directed him and his lawyer to exit through a non-public jury door right out the back, and then advised the illegal's lawyer that the illegal now gets special privileges, due process plus. Everybody else has to show up to court, right? He can appear by Zoom now, so he doesn't get arrested by ICE. That's this judge. So here's the background. They say, all right, listen, now Judge Dugan came out, and she is asking this court to dismiss this indictment based on judicial immunity, saying she's above the law. Now, the 10th Amendment also, she says, and the Constitution's vertical separation of powers. But she is citing no case in which a court has dismissed an indictment on either basis because neither one of those has any merit at all. In her lengthy memo, Dugan concedes that judges, like legislators and executive officials, are not above the law. Now here, they say the court set a 30-page limit in this case. Dugan supplemented her initial 7-page filing with the 36-page memo. Now, although the court would be fully justified in striking her memo in whole or in part, this response addresses her arguments in their entirety. Oh, the judge and her lawyers are not even following the local rules. Wow. Yeah. Says any memo must be 30 pages. Civil local rules, 7F, judge. Judges get so mad when you don't follow the rules in their courtroom. And her legal team is filing big fat motions, trying to sneak in some extra pages through the back door. Typical. So here's what they write in continuance. Trump's DOJ continues. Nonetheless, Backdoor Dugan claims that judges are entitled to absolute immunity from criminal prosecution except in 3 instances. There are 3 categories where you can prosecute a judge, but of course, none of those apply to Judge Dugan. She also says that state judges cannot be prosecuted federally for judicial acts because of the structure of the Constitution and the 10th Amendment. And she gleans this, she calls this state court immunity doctrine. She just calls it, I got it from the principles of federalism, comity, and vertical separation of power. Okay, that sounds fun. Nice platitudes there. Great. Now, Dugan's arguments saying that she's got immunity from prosecution inaptly rely on civil law and the notion that judicial immunity applies absent express congressional abrogation. So, in other words, unless Congress says it doesn't exist, it exists. However, she doesn't point to any direct authority for any of these theories, nor could she, because the Supreme Court has made clear that judges are not immune from criminal liability. In fact, there was a 1974 case called O'Shea versus Littleton. The Supreme Court decided that. And in the end, Dugan is now asking this court to develop a new novel doctrine of judicial immunity against any criminal prosecution and apply it to the facts alleged in the indictment without any reasonable basis, directly or indirectly, in any law, constitution, statutes, or case law. Now, Dugan's federalism argument that we've got, federal government and a state system, so the feds can't come after the states, is equally flawed. Resting on inopposite case law, so in other words, case law that shows the opposite of what she's saying, as well as factually unsupported and an inaccurate storyline that the federal government somehow tried to commandeer or control a state courtroom. Never happened. The court should reject Dugan's manufactured version of this so-called judicial immunity, as well as her unfounded concerns about federalism, and deny her motion. And they give us some law here. They say Dugan says that she takes the allegations against her at face value in her motion to dismiss. But many of the claims she asserts go way beyond the four corners of the indictment, and they're contradicted by materials provided in the discovery. And remember, like if she's filing a motion to dismiss, then we have to consider the government's allegations as true, or her argument is that she's has immunity in spite of all of the allegations. They say she's going beyond what we're even alleging outside of the documents and introducing things that we can rebut in discovery. Here's what an example is. Says that agents disrupted active proceedings. It's not true. They sat outside the courtroom and disrupted the courtroom and, quote, decided how they wanted to control her courtroom and the people in and near it. None of that is true. In fact, the trial evidence, including video footage from public hallways that we just looked at, and witness accounts, and audio recordings of the events which took place inside the courtroom, will show quite the opposite. That the, quote, planned arrest referenced in the indictment was meant to occur outside the courtroom after the hearing was over, so as specifically not to disrupt the proceedings at all. In fact, the agents had announced themselves to security when they arrived. The security officials actually responsible for controlling access to the courthouse had admitted the agents into the building, so security already approved them with full knowledge of what they were doing. The evidence will also show that agents were not in the courtroom when Dugan took the bench, but that after being told by a member of her staff that ICE agents were present, Dugan paused an unrelated case. She did it on her own, left her courtroom, and she disrupted proceedings in a colleague's courtroom to commandeer her assistance. Went over to some other judge, was like, can you help me? I'm too scared to go talk to these scary ICE men alone. Then confronts the agent in the public hallway with that other chick she brought with her, whoever that was. And where was that video? Yeah, over here. So apparently Dugan walks out right there. So some other judge, her like judicial sister, comes out. They're like, yeah, we're gonna go after and talk to these ICE agents. They're not gonna care about, or they're gonna be intimidated by two judges. This guy's sitting back with his legs crossed, like, who are these crazy ladies coming up and talking to me? So then Trump's DOJ continues. They say, the evidence will further show that after directing the agents through a set of double doors back to another office, at a time Dugan knew that the judge was out of the office, so took them back to his office, Dugan quickly returned to her courtroom and, among other things, directed the illegal's attorney, said this, quote, take your client out and come back and get a date. And then she said, go through the jury door, down the stairs, before physically escorting the illegal and his attorney into a non-public hallway with access to a stairwell that led to the exit. Scandalous. And like attorneys know what that means. Come back and get a date, right? Because sometimes like you have a last minute filing, like you're late to court. Hey, legal assistant, file this motion for continuance. Here's why. My trial ran long, whatever. Somebody can stand in for you. Hey, you're there in court. Can you just ask for continuance? Whatever. And the judge will do that. Okay, fine. Prosecutor, no objection. Any victims issues? Anything else to deal with here? Nothing. Okay, fine. Good cause is found. Case is continued. If all the parties are heard and there's process. But that's not what happened here. She escorted him out. And she did this all just days after thanking a colleague for providing information which explained that ICE could lawfully make arrests in the courthouse hallway. So some other witness is saying, oh yeah, Dugan knows. It's court policy that you can make arrests in the hallway. Now, put simply, nothing in the indictment or the anticipated evidence at trial supports anything that Dugan says and her assertions that any agents disrupted anything. Instead, all the events came from Dugan. She unilaterally exercised non-judicial and took unofficial actions in obstructing a federal immigration matter over which she, as a Wisconsin state judge, had no authority. At the very least, for purposes of deciding this motion, Dugan's claims to the contrary find no support in the indictment and should be rejected. Okay, so she's responding to allegations that we're not making. And so when she introduces these new things, she shouldn't be allowed to do that, essentially. Here's why. Saying Dugan asserts that this is no ordinary criminal case. I'm no ordinary criminal defendant. I'm a judge. I'm above the law. However, the fact that Dugan is a state court judge doesn't shield her from federal criminal prosecution. Get out of here. Her state judicial post is not a license to engage in conduct that violates federal criminal law. Under the doctrine of judicial immunity, generally, a judge is immune from a suit for money damages for judicial acts. That's the Waco case from 1991. Now, that doctrine evolved to shield judges from civil liability. So in 1991, it started as just a money thing. Then it's civil liability. They said, we got to promote independent decision-making in both civil and criminal cases, so judges need some immunity. Now, then in 1980, they tell us that judicial immunity arose because it was in the public interest to have judges who were at liberty to exercise their judgment without being attacked over a case. Now, Dugan argues that this doctrine should also be extended to criminal law, even though the Supreme Court long, quote, has recognized that a judge is not absolutely immune from criminal liability. In fact, the Supreme Court discussed the limits of judicial immunity in terms that could not be more clear, stating whatever may be the case with respect to civil liability generally, we have never held that performance of duties of a judge immunizes otherwise criminal behavior. In fact, on the contrary, the judicially fashioned doctrine of official immunity does not reach so far as to immunize criminal conduct that is proscribed by an act of Congress, obviously. So consistent with these authorities, judges have been prosecuted in dozens of cases, including in obstruction cases. They went and did the research on this and explained that this judge in 1975 was indicted on state charges of obstruction of justice and lying to a grand jury. Got one. Another one, Cochran. State judges of convictions for witness tampering. Another one, Baumgartner. Affirmed another conviction. Here's one, Grubb. Another state court judge convicted. Here's one, United States versus Claiborne. Ninth Circuit affirmed that one. List goes on and on. United States versus Ash. Moreland is down here. United States versus Walker. Here's one from DeLauder. Here's another one. State versus Brady. Okay. We prosecute state judges all the time for being corrupt hacks. Now, Dugan, in her motion to dismiss, which I do believe that we read, they say Dugan's memo focuses on the long and irrelevant history of common law from civil proceedings that talk about immunity. And we read through, like, what is she talking about? We fast forwarded through a lot of it. The only case she cites for the existence of common law immunity from criminal proceedings is a 1607 case from the Star Chamber over there in England. However, that single limited case, which is distinguishable with different facts, is from 1607 in England. That doesn't give a United States judge federal immunity against criminal charges, especially given other Supreme Court precedent in our own law. So, wow, they're going all the way back to 1607 in England. Yeah. Now, Dugan would have this court ignore both Supreme Court precedent and modern practice if she gets her way. She says that the Supreme Court statements in other cases should just be disregarded as dicta. Just change those rules, and you should enforce immunity for me. She says that because Congress did not eliminate judicial immunity, she's immune. But these statutes have been on the books for years, and the Supreme Court has never indicated there is any judicial immunity from criminal conduct, and there have been prosecutions for other similar applicable laws. Dugan's discussions of modern case law is also no more persuasive than her discussion of history. And the Trump case is clearly distinguishable, right? She's using the same three-bucket strategy as Trump, saying the Supreme Court in Trump held that the president does have criminal immunity for official acts based on the presidency's literal unique position in the constitutional scheme. You're a judge. You're not the president. And the unique risks to the effective functioning of the government if presidents were forced to constantly assess whether their actions were legal or not, and whether they could get hit by state or federal prosecutors. She cites Trump. She says, basically, I should be treated like Trump, and I should have absolute immunity across the board. She cites other cases, but her proposal would create a situation where the same conduct would constitute a judicial act for civil immunity, but not for criminal immunity. Like, for example, suppose a judge makes a favorable decision and gets paid for it. That's a judicial act for which there would be civil but not criminal immunity. And that would seem egregious. Quite simply, the Supreme Court has never retreated from its determination that judicial immunity does not apply in criminal cases. As such, whether something is a judicial act has never been the focus. Rather, the dividing line is whether the conduct fits the elements of a criminal statute. So we don't look at it through a judge's lens, we just look at it through a criminal lens. And because judicial immunity does not apply, the court doesn't need to inquire whether the acts are judicial or non-judicial. So with the three buckets with Trump, remember, we had, if it is articulated in the Constitution and says you can do this thing, then you can't be prosecuted for that. You're immune from prosecution because you have absolute immunity for stuff that you're clearly allowed to do. There's a middle bucket that says, well, we don't know if it's kind of within the bounds, the outer perimeter of your presidential responsibilities, and when it appears reasonably be within that outer perimeter, then we give you presumptive immunity. And if it falls outside of that perimeter, then it's no longer protected and you have no immunity. She's trying to do the same thing. This is a judicial bucket. This is a non-judicial bucket. However, even if the doctrine of judicial immunity truly applied, it would not help Dugan. As alleged in the indictment, she went outside of her official role. She stepped outside of that bucket. She tried to prevent federal law enforcement from doing their job. And the considerations that give rise to civil judicial immunity help distinguish judicial from non-judicial acts. Citing a bunch of other cases. Asking, was it a judicial act? Was she taking a specific adjudicative function or not? This case demonstrates that some actions are actually not judicial acts, like managing employees and other things. Now, she gives extensive examples of a judge's authority within her courtroom and over her cases, but none of those examples are what are even alleged here. Dugan interfered in our case, not vice versa. She suggests that her situation is different. She says, well, the arrest concerned a person that was going to be on my docket the morning. But even assuming she was aware of that fact at the time she left the bench and confronted the officers, which is not alleged in the indictment, and which is contradicted by other facts, this would not transform her conduct into a judicial act, going out and talking to the feds. There is no allegation that the agents sought to prevent this guy's appearance in her courtroom or involve themselves in her judgeship in any way. Instead, they patiently waited in the hallway for the proceeding to be over. Dugan herself took it upon herself to interfere with their duties and went out into the hallway so that she could remove this guy undetected. Now, although her memo in her motion to dismiss, which is over the legal limit, presents a narrative that an agent initiated a disruption which caused her to seek out the whole thing, right? It's like chicken or the egg. Which one caused it first? And she says they did just by virtue of being there. This version of events is inconsistent with the government with what we will show at trial. At minimum, accepting Dugan's facts as true would be premature and require the court to reject the allegation that Dugan falsely told agents that they needed a judicial warrant to effectuate her arrest. And that, of course, you can't do that under the standards of a decision. And Dugan is also conceding the limits of her authority derived from Wisconsin law, saying a state defines itself as a sovereign through the structure of its government, and Dugan was elected to adjudicate their disputes and administer the laws of Wisconsin. So both by law and by Dugan's own reckoning, therefore, she cannot point to any basis empowering her to adjudicate EFR's dispute with federal immigration authorities, right? She doesn't have, in other words, the standing to raise a claim on his behalf. It is meritless for her to claim that she could do so as a state judge who is performing duties assigned to her. Nothing in the Wisconsin statutes allows her to intervene in federal law. Now, she also, interesting, although Dugan stresses her duties under state law, she tellingly omits any mention of duties to victims because that illegal's victims were in the courtroom and she didn't care. According to Wisconsin law, a crime victim has the right to attend court proceedings and to have his or her interests considered when the court is deciding whether to grant a continuance in the case. Amazing. Wisconsin law says the victims have a say. We're not licensed in Wisconsin, but in Arizona, victims can show up and they talk to victims' advocates and have a lot of sway with prosecutors. And so same thing happened here. Prosecutor didn't even have a chance to make their position heard. So she was harming the victims who were already victimized by the illegal. In any event, no duties under state law could have authorized her to intentionally conceal someone from federal arrest or to obstruct a federal proceeding. Now, to summarize, even if judicial immunity existed in a criminal context, it fails to provide a basis for dismissing this indictment. She clearly exceeded the scope of her judicial duties when she was helping this illegal evade arrest. And that was more important than attending to the actual proceedings in her courtroom. And the 10th Amendment can't save her either. She invokes federalism. She says, well, the 10th Amendment, which reserves any rights not articulated back to the states, says, yeah, here, the powers, they put it in here. The 10th Amendment not delegated, the powers not delegated to the U.S. by the Constitution, the federal government, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states or respectively to the people. So we get everything else the Constitution doesn't cover. So she says, you don't have the rights because the 10th Amendment doesn't include that right to prosecute me. Her wide-ranging discussion of federalism touches upon other things: the Dormant Commerce Clause, Second Amendment rights, general police power, the Indian Child Welfare Act. However, Dugan does not cite a single case saying the 10th Amendment, or, quote, vertical separation of powers, bars the prosecution of a state judge who commits a federal crime. What she did was obstruction of a lawful, in a public space, area that was wholly within the jurisdiction of the federal government. And as noted, she talks about vertical separation of powers, but even if Dugan were a federal official asserting immunity, her claim would fail. And her invocation of federalism is even weaker than any horizontal claims, and the Supreme Court case law has supported us accordingly. Now, this idea of constitutional avoidance, like this is a complicated issue, toward the end of her brief, she invokes constitutional avoidance and says that the issues of judicial immunity and federalism should be bypassed. She says, don't turn a case into a problem if you can avoid it, but she cites no case suggesting a court may rely on a doctrine to circumvent the restrictions on a motion to dismiss. And so, in conclusion, Trump's DOJ drops this, and shout out to these two dudes for a banger motion. Richard G. Frawling and Keith Alexander, Criminal Division. Look at all nice stuff here. Kelly Watzka, Timothy Funnell, and Jonathan Koenig all signed off on this from the U.S. Attorney's Office. 5 people. Let's go. Dugan asked this court for an unprecedented dismissal on grounds of judicial immunity, ignoring well-established case law that has long permitted judges to be prosecuted for their crimes, combined with her attempt to then define judicial acts expansively, meaning that she can do all of those things, go to the hallway, move people around, basically anything related to her job is covered. That ruling would give state court judges carte blanche to interfere with valid law enforcement actions, including outside hallways, and perhaps even beyond. Her desired ruling would be, in essence, saying judges are, quote, above the law and uniquely entitled to interfere with federal law enforcement. The Supreme Court has repeatedly rejected this. This court should decline to expand this immunity of a judge in this fashion, reject the unfounded federalism concerns as the basis for dismissing this indictment, and deny her motion to dismiss. And it's nice to see, man, 5 DOJ attorneys up on this thing. So they're gearing up. Looks like we're getting some more names on board, and the DOJ is scaling. So we're happy to see it. Now, we've also got a new jury questionnaire, which is being sent around. And Trump has submitted another filing here saying, here's our response to the motion for a supplemental jury questionnaire. They say, all right, Trump is coming out. Trial could be coming up soon here if there's no continuances. Says this case is currently referred to the court to consider pretrial motions and to see whether we need a supplemental jury questionnaire. Now, Dugan's motion for this is premature and, with respect, not for the magistrate court to consider. So, Judge, you shouldn't be hearing this right now. So she nevertheless claims it's necessary to address this as soon as possible. And her reply brief to our motion is due. And so we shouldn't even be talking about this. Because the trial is currently scheduled to begin in July 2021, this year, the government agrees with Dugan that a status hearing before the district judge is appropriate. That would allow the parties to clarify a bunch of timing. Now, although her motion for a supplemental jury questionnaire is a matter for the trial judge, we'll talk about it here, saying supplemental questionnaires are trying to strike a balance. We're trying to identify bias, and her questionnaire doesn't go and solve those things. Some of the inappropriate questions include asking jurors about their political views, their religious and political organizations, TV stations, what websites do they watch, what stickers. These are intrusive. They have nothing at all to do with the publicity that's been created here. Now, her questionnaire is going to signal that this is about other evidence. She's trying to politicize this case, and the Trump DOJ is saying no. It's about the facts and the law, and we don't need to bring in politics into the fray. So the jury questionnaire, something that looked like this, as you can see here, and this will eventually be fleshed out. Can you read and write English? Yes. Are you employed? Yes. What's your occupation? No, I'm an illegal. I came in here across the border. I was very excited about Dugan's Backdoor. And so we'll come back to this, but they're kicking this around right now. And it sounds like the DOJ is objecting to what they are submitting. Now, meanwhile, President Trump was out over at Fort Bragg talking to our great men and women of the armed services and observing military excellence in action. Nice. All right, so looking good. Whether those are our troops coming down to secure America or whether those are illegals being afueraed back out of our country, either way, we've got the technology and the capabilities, as we see. And Sarah Huckabee Sanders was also out, and she is supporting the president. Here's a little bit of what she said in all of this immigration kerfuffle.
A couple.
I know you were talking about the LA riots. What's your response as a fellow governor to what's happening?
Well, I think it's absurd that they've allowed what is going on in California to take place. The fact that they're choosing rioters and criminals over American law enforcement is absolutely absurd. They've picked crazy over normal. I'm a big fan of order over chaos, and I think the president is absolutely 100% right to step in. Frankly, he shouldn't have to, but because of their failures, he needs to. And I think it's abysmal what this governor and this mayor have allowed to happen, but I'm thankful we have a president who will actually step up and get things done and make sure people are safe in their states and their communities.
Why do you think the Democrats keep supporting the illegal immigration?
It's a great question. You'd have to ask a Democrat. I certainly couldn't get in their mind and figure out why they're making a lot of the decisions that they are. You would think after the last several months, they would see that that's not only bad policy, but it's bad politics. It's not working. What President Trump is doing is working and has the vast majority of support from Americans. And frankly, they should be more supportive of the efforts that he has going on.
For those critics who say, oh, it's peaceful protesters, or at least there should be some element of free speech involved in this, what's your response?
Nobody's against free speech, but we are against people throwing rocks through windows, attacking police officers, impeding the flow of traffic, stopping public transit from being able to move forward. That's not a peaceful protest. Anybody that's paying attention and says that is frankly just being dishonest. And so I think they'd be hard pressed to actually see what's taking place on the ground and make that argument.
Governor, what brings you to the White House today? And as a governor, would you welcome the President of the United States sending our troops to your state over your objections?
If we needed help I would be making the phone call myself to the president and asking for his assistance. But in Arkansas, we would never allow to take place what they're letting go on in California. But if we needed help, the president would be one of the first people I would call, because he is somebody I know who cares deeply about making sure the American people are safe and secure first and foremost. And so I have no doubt he would do what was needed to help step in and protect people. Reason I'm here, meet with administration officials, see how Arkansas can continue to be supportive of the president and continue working closely with this administration on all of the great things that they've been doing. Thanks, guys.
Well, an actual competent, capable governor who can come out and articulate what needs to happen in the country, while Gavin Newsom, meanwhile, is like, arrest me, Tom, arrest me, please, so I have some meaning and purpose in my life. But as we can see, Backdoor Judge Dugan now getting hit with a response to her motion to dismiss her indictment. She stepped way outside the lines. She knows what she did. And so we'll see what her reply looks like when it gets filed in the Eastern District of Wisconsin. Then we'll have a federal judge come out and make a ruling on this, and we'll see where it goes. But I think this case will be moving forward and will not be dismissed at the outset right here, because the evidence is, if you hold it in a light most favorable to the government, there's plenty there. So we'll keep our eye on this one. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for hitting the like button. Thank you for sharing the channel and the show with a friend or family member. And thanks for coming back here on the next one. All right, my friends, it has been a beautiful stream, and thank you for joining us. If you're just getting here, quick recap on what we talked about. We had some good stuff today. We talked about Gavin Newsom losing. What a loser. He tried to get an ex parte hearing and to get Trump's National Guard thrown out of California. But Bill Clinton appointed judge Charles Breyer came out and rejected that attempt. So Newsom loses his little TRO against Hegseth. Don't come in here and protect us, Pete. We love our criminal illegal aliens. So we read through some of those filings, got the latest on what's happening in California. Even LA County supervisors are saying, yeah, this is not good. And we are now dealing with anarchists, and this is about dismantling law enforcement. We all know that. Gavin Newsom hasn't been able to figure it out, so he's suing the president. Hegseth responded to a lot of this and obliterated their talking points, and we appreciate that. Then Trump came out and responded to the threats by Mayor Bass, and he's warning the insurrectionists we may invoke the Insurrection Act, right? Last time we were debating sending in the National Guard. You guys burned the entire city of Minneapolis down because Tim Walz is incompetent and Kamala Harris was bailing out the rioters, raising bond money for them. Now Trump saying we're not going to play that game. We also saw the Mexican Senate is now endorsing the Reconquista and the seizure of American lands with their illegal invaders. We got reaction from Kennedy, Mullen, and a great one from Tom Cotton, all worth watching on that second segment. Then we talked about Backdoor Dugan, read through the Trump DOJ's motion to dismiss, which I thought was very nicely assembled, walked through all of her allegations about judicial immunity and explained why she was not in the box of judicial immunity and why she's relying on 1607 cases from England is because the law doesn't support her claims here. And we'll keep our eye on that one as well. But now, my friends, it's time to hear from you. And I saw some great super chats and donos come in, and we're very grateful for those. Thank you for sending those in. I think we got some new membos too. And we're excited to chat with everybody today. Thank you for supporting our show with your love. And thank you to Donut and John for clipping for us. John says, OMG, it's Taco Tuesday. Except we're not celebrating Taco Tuesday here anymore. And we're not celebrating Pupusa Tuesday anymore either. Tacos, pupusas, margaritas, guacamole, it's all canceled. Indefinitely. Pending the deportation. Rick D says Newsom got unlucky. The judge is the brother of former SCOTUS Justice Breyer. LOL. Is that because, is there a rift between Breyer and Gavin? I would think it would be a good pick for him. I was thinking, oh gosh, it's a Bill Clinton appointee. It's a super lib. He'll come out It's Ribeye Tuesday. Yeah, that's what we're talking about. Ribeye Tuesday, Cheeseburger Wednesday. What's up? Gen X Ben. Hey, Rob, my wife and I are back. Guess when you come to the U.S. legally, there is no trouble entering. Wow, that's great. Gen X Ben, a legal immigrant. We love our legal immigrants. Thank you, Gen X Ben. Shout out to you and your wife. Thanks for coming legally. We appreciate you doing it. And for joining us. Shout out to Gen X Ben and your wife. Welcome back. Hopefully your travels were amazing. Sheila Poo, I am not tired of winning yet. Trump and MAGA all the way, all the time. Amazing, Sheila Poo. I'm with you on that. Let's go. Let's go. We're just ramping up. We're just warming up. We just got done with calisthenic stretches at the beginning. This one came in from Lil Kim Jong-un. And this is not a racist statement. I'm just going to read it as it's written. And if you are North Korean and you're offended by this, send me an email. Lil Kim Jong-un. Hello, America. We meet again. 82nd Airborne #1. They live Trump. My spies have uncovered massive happiness among the paratroopers. Looks like it to me. Even Trump's running calisthenics now, says Lil Kim Jong-un. Good to see you, Lil Kim Jong. Thanks for being here and sending in some support. Hey, Rob is here from Rumble. Says, the U.S. paid Mexico for the land, including California. Yeah, it was a lot. It was like 15 million bucks, I think, paid in installments of like 3 million over every year. Under the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, signed in 1848, it ended the Mexican-American War. The treaty ceded about 55% of Mexico's territory to the U.S., including present-day California, Nevada, Utah, Arizona, parts of Mexico, Colorado, Wyoming. In exchange, the U.S. paid Mexico $15 million and assumed $3.25 million in debts owned by Mexico to American citizens. This land was known as the Mexican Cession and was roughly about 525,000 square miles. It was a ton of land. And by the way, there were people saying we should march all the way down to Panama. And I think Polk and there were some others in Congress. It was basically the Whigs, I think. The Whigs were saying that, you know, they were opposed to manifest destiny and all of that. And like, so there's some debate about whether they would have just taken all of Mexico, which maybe should have happened since they're not accepting the treaty that we duly signed together. Jason on Blast. What's up, Jason on Blast? Thank you for bringing in 10 new membos, including Vibe in My Lane, James Turpin. What's up? Sputnik Geezer, Stephen Beaver, Dr. Voodoo, Solemn Peace. What's up, Scott Petty Post? Karen Ostravosky. We got Sean the Artist, formerly known as John Cusack, LLM, is here. And Brother Ted, all gifted membos. Man, how long can your YouTube name be? That's incredible. I like it. What's up, Lil Kim Jong-un? Says, some paratroopers got out in the trees during the display. It happens. Good times had by all. Just another day in the division. Trump loves the paratroopers. Did they really get caught in the trees? That guy, he looks like a good sport right there. He's like, oh, yep, happens. Lil Kim Jong-un says, Trump watching all the Americans being the best division in the world. Airborne all the way. Shout out Lil Kim Jong-un. Shouting out the Air Force. What's up, Chubby Stubby? I think there's enough evidence right now to charge Newsom and Bass of seditious conspiracy. The evidence has been on full display, thanks to their own big mouths in admitting to telling LAPD and the LA Sheriff's Department to stand down and not aid the federal agents that first day. Remember seditious conspiracy? Yes, we do. Proud Boys and Oath Keepers, who were sentenced to like 20 to 30 years, defined as 2 or more persons conspiring to overthrow by force or oppose by force or prevent the execution of U.S. law or to seize federal property by force. Yeah, I think you could probably make the argument for that. The response would be that they have immunity because this is just a policy decision and they're not breaking the law, but because they're in positions of power. But certainly a bunch of other people like the Churla groups, anybody who's not in a position of power, who's funding this and participating in it, yeah, they should be charged just like the Proud Boys were, except this is actually a conspiracy. Wojo, Taco Bell is now refusing to put ice in their drinks. But from Taco Bell, no ice. Well, that's fine. The illegals can have warm soda then. What do I care? Spudman, does anyone have the court listener landing page for the Newsom Trump case? I looked under Judge Breyer and it's not there. Oh yeah, of course, your boys got it. And it's right here. So Newsom versus Trump, this is where you'll find it. Right here. Your boy, where would that message come in from? Rumble. I'll drop it over on Rumble. Court listener, I'll drop it on the locals. And we'll drop it on the YouTubes. So everybody can grab the link. Lil Kim Jong-un. Trump loves paratroopers so much he gave his MAGA hat for the 18th Airborne Corps hat. That's true. That is a rarity, isn't it? That is a bit of a rarity. What's going on, Rob? Someone found dead in a place where looting occurred. Anyone know the details? I haven't seen that. Someone mentioned it this morning on the Membo stream. Somebody was killed. Everybody's kind of waiting for that. Like, we don't want anybody to die. We're like, dead people. Savage Studios. Every time I try to logically listen to Gavin or Karen's gibberish, I go cross-eyed, and I see Gavin Bass and Karen Newsom. Are they any different, really? Not much. They just say the same things. So it's easy to make that mistake. Yeah, and they're both Democrats. What's up, Maura Smith-Mitski? Thank you, Maura Smith, for becoming a membo. Grab the members-only stream from this morning, and of course, come join us tomorrow morning on the members-only show. Felix de la Cruz. This is weird from this judge. No knee-jerk reaction from a judge in granting a TRO. Let the government file responses before making judgment. Yeah. It was a little surprising. I was like, okay. Maybe the judge is tired of seeing his city burn too. He's like, this is ridiculous. Knox, hey, happy Tuesday, all. I guess the looters do not know that Apple equipment is all AirTagged. Yeah, and this old guy says the same. Those idiots in the Apple store are too stupid to realize the phones on the displays are dumber than they are. Yeah, and I think I saw images of actually the phones that have been activated. Like the phones have all been canceled and turned off. Apple like sent a notice. This phone's been disabled. It's being tracked. They should have waited. They should have just waited a week, tracked them all, arrested them all, then activated the return device. Lil Kim Jong-un. The 82nd Airborne Apaches give President Trump a hell of a show. Man, that would be so cool to go be there for that. Amazing. Felix de la Cruz. Wait for June 14th. They told you that they're going to do it. Yeah, they are. It's all over the place. No Kings, I think, is the website, and they're setting them up. Wojo. Did anyone notice when they looted the shoe store, none of the work boots were taken? But no. Like tools and other things, you just kind of leave those behind. You want that iPhone, though, because you can play a lot of games on there. Felix de la Cruz. Bloviating, blithering Democrats, idiots. Good comment. Sheila Pooh says, go Pete. Love that guy. Chubby says, hey, I know it's Papusa and Taco Tuesday. Not anymore. It's canceled. It's now Tri-Tip Tuesday. I smoked a Tri-Tip today. So in 2 days, it's going to be Tri-Tip Taco Thursday. Today is Tri-Tip Tuesday. That's what it is now, too. It is Tri-Tip Tuesday. No more pupusas. No more tacos. All of it is canceled. Thank you, Chubby. Felix de la Cruz. Governor Timothy the Tampon, no balls wall, superstar example on how not to handle rioters. Now Mayor Dumb Bass is a CIA-trained communist. And her hair looks like a chia pet, says Felix de la Cruz. Chat with me says, it sounds to me that Karen Bass and Newsom are saying they control the protesters, and they won't allow the protesters to stop unless ICE leaves the city. By the way, Rob, did you hear that there has been at least one death during the protest in LA? I've heard it, but I haven't seen it confirmed. Who died? What happened? Got to look it up. ABC News fires Terry Moran. The moron's gone. Days after veteran anchor social media outburst at Trump's aide, Stephen Miller. He's gone. Goodbye. He can go start a podcast with Don Lemon. Hey, Sam in Texas. I smell a Rico happening. Yeah, why not? Hit him with Rico. Or, yeah, I mean, this could go all sorts of different ways. But we got 3.5 years to really ramp this up. We're excited about it. Felix de la Cruz says, looks like the website No Kings is working out very well for them. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I don't know. It feels to me like a lot of it's just kind of set up like they just auto-populated a bunch of cities. I don't know if the actual turnout is going to be, that significant, but we'll see. Felix de la Cruz says, remember Fort Sumner? Civil war was started over losing slave labor by the Democrats. Now this is starting by Democrats because of the loss of cheap human traffic labor and workers at any age. Says Maxine James Brown Waters, I feel good. Didn't they find out her office did some unlawful money grabbing through her campaign fund? Yeah, they did. She had to pay $68,000, I think, back. Wasn't indicted, though, in California. Didn't have a Tish come after her like they did for Trump. But, of course, She's going to get away with it. I'm sure she made a lot more money than she has to pay back in the fines, but we did do a video on that. This one from Serrano Guardias. Let Mexico keep talking. We'll make Mexico, formerly Mexico. Yeah. Yeah, they're talking about like taking over our towns and cities. I'm thinking to myself, okay, well, there's a lot we could do with Cancun. It's pretty nice property over there. Maybe we should just take that too. Hey, Knox, I have lived in the Southwest for most of my life, and I've never knew a Hispanic named Scheinbaum. Yeah, it's an interesting thing, Scheinbaum. Scheinbaum. And I don't know what her background is. And it is an interesting thing for the president of Mexico to be named Claudia Scheinbaum. I feel like we looked that up at one point. Like, what was that background? Let's ask this question and see recent development. She's faced diplomatic tensions. Yeah, so Claudia Scheinbaum. Yeah. Yeah, here's what I was thinking about, because Scheinbaum sounds Jewish to me, and I think she is Jewish. It says she comes from a Jewish family, though she is secular and does not identify as an observant Jew. And I thought Mexico was like very Catholic country. Mexico, Catholic. I think it's like 80% Catholic. So for Mexico to elect a Jewish woman with the name Scheinbaum, yeah, it's 78. 2020 numbers. It's about 78% identify as Catholic in Mexico, and they elected Claudia Scheinbaum, a Jewish woman. Weird. I don't know. It's interesting. Don McGrory says, hey, Rob, sorry it's been a while. I have been studying for a new career in AML called anti-money laundering with a focus on illegal wildlife animal trade. Thanks for everything. Don, that's awesome. Illegal wildlife animal trade? Shout out to you, man. Thank you for protecting our animals and stopping the abuse of them. And we appreciate that, Don. Shout out. Thanks for saying what's up. Thanks for being a part of the show. Thanks for being an amazing membo. We appreciate you. Ellie, what's up? 4 months as a membo, says, can we get rid of California? Probably not. You know, they do say that in a few million years there will be an earthquake or something. We're not wishing for that. We don't want that. We don't want to get rid of California. We want to restore California. We want to purge all of the anti-Americanism madness out of there and take it back. You know, Mark Twain used to go there and write there. Like San Francisco used to be a great city. Now they've got poop trackers all over the place. And it takes them 20 years to build a toilet. So we want to take it back. It's a beautiful country, and we should have it. It should be back like the Golden Age, during an earlier era when it set a lot of culture and tone for the rest of the country. Now it's just a little bastion of transgenderism and illegalism. Hey, I am an American man. It says illegals are upset. Now they know how legal citizens feel. Get out of our country and go back to yours and make it great again. Exactly right. Like if they love their culture, if they love their flags, if they love their heritage, go back to your country and work on it there. Go protest the corruption at your city hall in your country. Don't come to our country and complain about America. Will Crump, why are verified communists no longer considered enemies of the state and barred from ever holding any political office or position of authority? Well, because most people in our country have become emasculated, unfortunately, and they don't understand the threat of communism, and they just sit around brainwashed in tolerance and acceptance of deadly, murderous ideologies that have resulted in more deaths around the world than anything else that has happened ever. And we're supposed to just sit here and engage with it and then elect them as mayors of cities. Ridiculous, Will, I agree. Hey, Sheila Poo. No more months, 2 more months to another new baby. So 16 plus 2, calculator 18 divided by 2, that's 9. 2 babies! Amazing, Sheila Poo. Thank you for having another one with us and sticking around for so long. You're amazing. Hey, Rothlo over on Rumble says, I'm sure the Mexicans would consider it sound logic and acceptable if Spain and France said in an official declaration that Mexico was once theirs too, right? Such a great comment. Rothlo, it's true. Yeah, Spain. Actually, Mexico. Actually, it's ours. And so are you. Yeah, Felix de la Cruz. It is not Mexico anymore. Mexicans, Texas Revolutionary Army beat the Mexican Army, and we'll do it again. And then the Mexican Army lost to the U.S. Army, 2-time losers. It is not your land anymore. And we'll do it again if you'd like to. King of Biltong, what's up? King of Biltong is here. You know about Biltong, packed with a bunch of good stuff. You can check yours out at biltongusa.com, and he's got set up a promo code for us called Robert at 10% off. Shout out to Biltong. What's up? Fred Pedamonte, I was finally in court for wrongful eviction today. I won everything. Fred, we saw that. We heard that from you this morning. I'm glad it went well. New lease and everything else I wanted. Thank you to Nancy Knox Bierman. Knox Bierman is a defense attorney in Texas and helping Fred out. Knox, thank you for doing that. Fred, congratulations on a successful day in court. Thanks for reporting in. Felix de la Cruz, Mexican Manteca military is in LA. Yeah, I'm probably right. Probably right. Like, there are portions of LA where the cops won't go. It's not there. We're not in functional control of it. I am Divine Creation. 4 months as a member. Thank you, I am Divine Creation. Says leaf blowers are used to deflect the tear gas. Oh, that makes sense. Okay. So you just get a little electric blower. Yeah, the wind blower is for tracking where the tear gas will track when it's deployed. So they just turn that puppy on and blow it out of there. Thank you for the updates. Great feedback. Object Class Keeter says, the people who lived in the former Mexican territory became loyal U.S. citizens after the war and are probably GOP now. The people coming now have no claim. That's exactly right. Yeah, at the time of the treaty, they gave everybody in the region an opportunity. Do you want to move back to Mexico or do you want to be U.S. citizens? Most of them became citizens. Felix de la Cruz says the Mexican, and by the way, the Mexicans needed our help to stop the Indian attacks. Like, the Indians were just ransacking them. So the U.S. sent a bunch of troops down there to the border. Like, the Mexicans couldn't control the land. They were getting ravaged by all the Comanches and all of the Navajos and just getting destroyed. So they're like, okay, U.S., you send in the troops. We can't control this land anyways. We did. We couldn't hardly control it either. And, the rest of the Indian wars are history. Felix de la Cruz, Mexican Manteca Army, and the uniform has a Palestinian keffiyeh and headgear. Odd. Soros is sponsoring No Kings. Is he? I thought I saw that also was the Walmart heiress who's also doing that. Stupidity, shout out. Hey, Deluxe Knight, our farming for us all, Feeding America, says, it is hot in southeastern Washington. 105 out there while refilling my planter. Here's what the sweet corn seed looks like. It is pink because of the antifungal treatment. We got 100,000 plus seeds in there, baby. Look at those seeds. So that is our farmer planting sweet corn for all of us to eat with no fungi. ... 9 says, Senator Kennedy says, he's a sheep in sheep's clothing. That's truth and poetry. Scott J says, New York City is facing over 10,000 protesters that marched in just now. Chicago's facing another 1,000 protesters. LA is now dishing it out to rioters. Yeah, I'm keeping my eye on the cables to see what they're covering. And it looks like there's still activity in LA into the 5th day now of the insurrection. Ravicus, we need to eliminate the head of the snake. Who's responsible for paying for this and delivering the equipment and the bricks downtown? That dude needs to be in chains ASAP. I'm sure I saw some photos around of the guy who drove the truck up, who dropped all the face masks off, so they'll probably be on to him soon. Doan says, on the issue of funding these riots, multimillionaire Neville Singham's name and the Party for Socialism and Liberation, or PSL, may soon surface. And I think I saw somebody said that dude lives in China. Yeah. Good to see you, Doan. Thank you for that. Neville Singham. I think Representative Luna also flagged that name for us. Thank you, Doan. Felix de la Cruz. Hannah, come in and out my backdoor Dugan. Sounds like a Lonely Fans video title. Yeah. Tex Rick. Bingo, Rob. On LA being lost and reporting the news. Thank you, Tex Rick. Yeah, it certainly feels that way. Spuds is here. The Noble Spud, Foundation of the Irish Diet. Bringing in 5 new membos. What's going on? Blank 9831. Kendall Links is here. Lindsay Cornegay. What's up, Trina Wright? Taffy Smith gifted membos courtesy of the Noble Spuds. I am Divine Creation. Says, Rob, everyone needs to look up No King Sorg. Funding and scheduling info is there from I am Divine Creation. Elaine Smith, 35 months as a membo, says, Rob, you sound parched. You used to drink often. Do I sound parched today? I feel like I have a little bit of an allergy thing going on. So kind of like a little nasal kind of drip going on. But we're making our way through it. Thank you, Elaine Smith, for encouraging me to stay hydrated. I appreciate it. 35 months as a member. Thanks for being here, coming up on multiple babies. You're amazing. Mark Shaw, OMG. She wanted him to use her back door. She did. Use the back door. He ran right out there. That's what happened in the indictment. Spudman. California used to be Mexico. Before that, Spanish. Before that, thousands of years of one native tribe taking it from another over and over again. Where do we stop going back and declare a winner? Yeah, maybe we should give it back to the Navajos and the Comanches. Cornelius Jackson, what's up? My boy be reading the F out of that paperwork. Hopefully you're talking about me, baby, because that's what we want to do here. We want to read the F out of these court documents like you've never seen it. Ever. Thank you, Cornelius, for the very strong endorsement. We appreciate it. Hey, little Kim Jong-un says federal judge denies Newsom's lawsuit. Newsom. Trump to the lawsuit. We covered that. Good stuff. Thanks for the heads up. CJ Takes Pics. Welcome aboard, CJ Takes Pics. Thank you for joining up as a membo. Grab the member stream from this morning, and we'll see you tomorrow. Curtis Bartle says MAGA is winning bigly. Go, MAGA, go. Curtis, thank you for the very nice dono. Yeah, and I think we're seeing it in the polls. I think immigrants are agreeing with us. And the people who are rioting are proving our points every day. They just come out there waving more of their Mexican flags around. We're like, see, told you. We've been saying it for years. Hello. Sharpie Guy, great job today, Rob. Thank you, Sharpie Guy. Do you think that after reading Backdoor's pleading that she is even qualified to wear a black robe? I agree. No more tacos around here. Tired of it until the illegals are extricated. They could take their tacos and go. Sharpie Guy. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like her judgment is very terrible. She's got bad judgment and commits crimes. And she abuses victims. So, no, I think that if I were on the judicial committee, I'd have some real concerns about her, and she'd have to show us why she's still worthy. Defrauded in China says, hi, Wob. Kim Jong-un's cousin here in China. CCP defrauded me. I want to come to America. From Defrauded in China. And you can check out that website called thechinahustle.us. All right, this is good. Okay, we're going to be careful here. Jonah Finn, what's up? Hey, says 9th month Frankenstein supporter baby second account. Whoa, Jonah Finn. So it's like Frankenstein's monster. We're just smashing two little bits together. So 3 months over here on the arm and 6 months over here on the head. Mash it together. We got a full baby in the house. Thank you, Jonah Finn, for being here for 9 months. We appreciate you. Glenn Croy, 22 months. Thank you, Glenn. Amazing. Hey, K Bean, hope your birthday was as beautiful as you. K Bean is a smoke show, 100%. Hey, Sean the artist, formerly known as John. Newsom didn't file in the Eastern District. Sacramento is the Eastern District. Oh, so you're saying he filed in the wrong jurisdiction as well? Yeah, he filed in the Northern jurisdiction because that's Psychoville, San Francisco. And yeah, Northern District. He may have been trying to get a certain judge, which is why he didn't file in that location. Sean the artist, thank you for that. Rhino Pup, what's up? Did the rioters steal any pagers from the Israel Army surplus store? That's an interesting comment. I don't know. We'll see. We'll find out. We'll find out very soon. So will they. Deluxe Knight says, Mexico, in my opinion, is truly a country without its own culture to date. Should what color all of the historical precedents have been in the capital? Spain and Napoleon showed up and kicked their butts because they killed his brother-in-law that they begged to have sent over for as their president. Then they didn't like the rules. They are truly a melting pot. Should check out what color. Had to correct things. Got a phone call in the middle of typing that. That includes the Italians took them over at one point in history. Is that right? Deluxe Knight? Good details. Thank you for that. Former LEO says Scheinbaum sounds like an escaped Nazi war criminal. At the end of World War II, the Nazis fled to Latin America. Yeah, and I think Argentina, right? This old guy says Scheinbaum isn't even Hispanic. She was born to a Lithuanian father and a Bulgarian mother, both who came from communist backgrounds and then immigrated to Mexico. It's incredible. How'd she get elected? Rig D. LA, DC, New York, and Chicago currently all have them. We got little ones popping off in Arizona. Concert Chick says another judge is busted helping an illegal. Interesting. Haven't seen that one. From conservativebrief.com. Thanks for flagging that for us, Concert Chick. We'll take a look at that one. Chat with me says, Ron. Have you heard Muslim calling for Trump, Vance, and Rubio and Hegseth's demise? Which Muslim? Well, I don't know. I think Ilhan kind of is intimating at that, but I'm not sure about the others. Knox Bierman, what's up? Says the family of DJ Daniel is asking for prayers. Oh, man. He's in ICU. Okay, so he had brain surgery. Okay, so they're working on him. All right, so he's in ICU. Shout out to little man DJ Daniel, who's more accomplished than I'll ever be. We appreciate him. Shout out to DJ Daniel. Knox, thanks for flagging that for us as well and sending some love his way. All right, so my friends, thank you so much for sending these in. Really awesome comments. Thank you for your support of our work and our show. Thanks for being here, being a part of everything we're going through. Couldn't do it without you, and it is a real honor and a privilege, and so we appreciate you. Before we wrap it up on the day, we want to thank our amazing mods and meme smiths. We got K-Bean, John, we got Donut, we got Carrie B, we got Jigum, Just Rhonda, Elliot, and Janek, Dog Digger, Neuro D over on the Rumbles helping us out and making this show nice and beautiful. And once again, thanks for all your love and all your support. Members, stick around. We are going over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com, and YouTube friends, hit the refresh button in about 2 minutes after the song ends. We'll come back and we'll take some final comments and debrief with membos. Take some locals comments, see what you thought about the show, and debrief before we say our goodbyes. But my friends, it has been just a beautiful stream. Thanks for hanging with us. Thanks for the love. Thanks for the support. Tonight, I hope that you have the most beautiful rest you can possibly imagine, and you come back tomorrow, because we are going to be back here. And in order to do it appropriately, we are going to need to see you right back here, so that together with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Make it a beautiful night, my friends. Sleep very well. I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching, my beautiful friends. Now it's that time where the stream must end. You brought the heat with every chat and line. Together we expose corruption. One more time we dove in the truth where the media hides. Lit up the lies with receipts on all sides. The fight isn't over, but we made them sweat. We ain't done yet, no, not just yet. Because together we are watching the watchers. Truth on our side. Watching the watchers. We won't be denied. Watching the watchers. Eyes open wide. Fighting for freedom with nothing to hide. Drop a like and don't forget to share. And bring a friend who's ready to care. Tomorrow's lies are just today's news, but here we see through the scripted